Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, and we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons drama. We're going to talk about the situation with Dragonlance and how the authors, or at least one of the authors of Dragonlance, is accused of being a fascist for posting a meme. We're going to talk about that in the future of Dragonlance. Apparently there is going to be a future for Dragonlance, which is good. I think this is pretty awesome for those of us who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s reading Dragonlance. In fact, Dragonlance was one of my first introductions to Dungeons & Dragons. The very first introduction being the cartoon series, and then I started reading some of the books and eventually started playing with some friends of mine. But I had a really good friend who was really all about Dragonlance back in grade school and junior high, and we used to trade the books all the time and have a lot of very fond memories of Kryn. But, it hasn't been so good for Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman over the last couple years in terms of their dealings with Wizards of the Coast, who now own Dungeons & Dragons. There was a lawsuit, big lawsuit that apparently got dismissed, but they are releasing these books, after all, as I understand it, but not without drama, because Tracy Hickman threw some shade at Critical Role, and God forbid you throw shade at Critical Role current year, because Critical Role has become the face of Dungeons & Dragons for a lot of people. And I don't disagree with the sentiment. I actually know some of the people who work on Critical Role. I don't think they're that bad. I really don't think the people working on the show are that bad, but it definitely has grown an audience of people that would be more comfortable, I think, in Portland than other places of the country, let's just put it that way. And comicbook.com has a scathing article written today about how awful it was and how fascisty it was of Tracy Hickman to put up a meme. We can't do that. So before we get into it, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 174,000, almost 175. We got to push it over 175, guys. So if you can hit that sub button, that would be much appreciated. So let's talk about the drama first with Dragonlance. There was a lawsuit last year. We did a video on this, that there was a big lawsuit, and apparently that has been dropped. This is coming from Polygon just a couple of weeks ago, that the Dragonlance authors dropped a $10 million lawsuit against Wizards of the Coast. Wise and Hickman voluntarily dismissed their case. So I don't know if they reached a settlement or what the deal was. So court documents claim that Hickman and Wise were approached in 2017 by Wizards to write a new series of novels. Negotiations include a new licensing agreement between the authors and the publisher, plus an additional agreement with Del Rey Books. Novels titled Dragons of Deceit and Dragons of Fate had already been completed, with a third manuscript reportedly on the way. There's Tracy Hickman with his books. The dismissal of the case may be a sign that whatever impediments to the publication of these books is now cleared away. Hickman was not happy with the interference, as I understand it, because in 2020, the pair alleged a breach of contract related to their new series of novels set in their famous role-playing universe. How exactly the disagreement has been resolved is unknown. I think there probably was a settlement. I don't know. But the Dragonlance characters have been noticeably absent from Dungeons & Dragons. I don't play 5th edition. We bought it. I don't play it. I've actually been playing basic fantasy with the kids. Unfortunately, the author of Basic Fantasy doesn't like the fact that I promoted it on the show. But you know what? It's a good system. It's relatively cheap. You can go out to Amazon and pick that up for yourself. It is a throwback to 80s, very basic Dungeons & Dragons. It's a lot of fun for noobs to get into it, and the kids seem to enjoy it, and that is what I've been playing instead of official Wizards of the Coast stuff, because I don't like a lot of what's coming out of Wizards of the Coast. Now, again, don't invoke the name of Clownfish TV if you do go by Basic Fantasy. By the way, he apparently doesn't like us very much. I don't know. Never met the guy. Anyway, so this was dismissed. We've got new books coming, apparently. So according to Margaret Wise, the new books will return fans to the world of Kryn and will bring our beloved characters to a new generation of readers. There isn't a firm release date yet, but Wise and Hickman said they're anticipating the first installment will hit stores later this year. So they had to have gotten things worked out with Wizards of the Coast. Okay, that's fine. Now, moving on to this week, actually moving on to today, Comicbook.com puts an article up saying that Dungeons & Dragons' future is closer to Critical Role than any other campaign setting. The future of D&D looks like Critical Role. Why did they post this? Well, because Tracy Hickman posted this on Facebook. Reject modernity, the cast of Critical Role, embrace tradition. Ooh, could it be that some of the old school creators, Dungeons & Dragons creators, are looking at the Critical Role situation and being like, this is not what we want from tabletop RPGs. We want to go back old school. We want to kick it old school. A lot of fans are asking for old school D&D, and we're kind of rejecting Critical Role, rejecting orcs as racist tropes, rejecting a lot of the changes to the game that make the game more quote unquote woke. That we would just want to go back to old school D&D. It's a joke. It's a meme, right? Well, that will not do. According to comicbook.com, the growth and future of Dungeons & Dragons player base is better defined by the rise of Critical Role than a fixation on past campaign settings and projects. Earlier this year, Tracy Hickman and Margaret Wise announced a new trilogy of Dragonlance novels. While the Dragonlance fans celebrated the news, Hickman seemingly framed the announcement as pushback against modern D&D trends, sharing a meme on Facebook that unfavorably framed the characters of Critical Role compared to the tradition of Dragonlance. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. He eventually removed his post after clarifying he found the meme amusing and that he likes both Dragonlance and Critical Role. Well, he has to say that, doesn't he? Because if they work this out and they've got new books coming out, he has to say that. He did remove it, though, but his post still drew heavy criticism from fans, both old and new. Putting aside the most problematic aspects of the meme, reject modernity, embrace tradition stems from Umberto Eco's Eternal Fascism, which uses both phrases as criteria for a fascist regime. It's still disappointing to see Hickman share an attack on a popular D&D franchise. In many ways, Critical Role mirrors the path that Dragonlance took towards stardom. Both started off as home games and grew to become extremely popular franchises sanctioned by the owners of D&D. That is actually true. A lot of people, I guess, don't realize that Dragonlance started out as Wise and Hickman's personal D&D campaign. Both franchises thrive on inner character drama more than strict adherence to the plot. Both franchises also have passionate fan bases, which have contributed greatly to their wider relevance outside the world of tabletop role-playing games. Cosplayers. However, the meme does unwittingly point out how representative Critical Role is to Dungeons & Dragons and its continued relevance to modern society. The meme shared by Hickman directly compares the characters of Critical Role to the protagonists of Dragonlance. Dragonlance characters are a mix of traditional fantasy races that include half-elves, humans, elves, dwarves, and kender, a fantasy race unique to Dragonlance. There were and remain standard character options in D&D. However, one of the major shifts to occur between the debut of Dragonlances today is the embrace of non-traditional character races. That's reflected in the diverse cast of Critical Role. Now, I just added that. Whose characters include a tiefling, a half-orc, an Asmar. I don't play 5e. What the hell is an Asmar? A halfling who recently was a goblin, and a furbolg. All of those races have roots in older versions of the game that become increasingly more common and popular for players to use in recent years. I have never heard of an Asmar. Somebody's going to get me, oh my God, you've never heard of an Asmar? They've been around since 2nd edition. No, I actually haven't. While humans are still a popular D&D choice, you'll see just as many bullywugs, turtles, and tabaxis when sitting down at the D&D table. It's just like a furry con over here. While Critical Role shouldn't be seen as an absolute standard for modern D&D games, it does better reflect what you will see at more tables than a thick fantasy novel featuring homogenous characters. It's important to remember why the makers of Dungeons & Dragons have embraced Critical Role so wholeheartedly. The show represents a more inclusive and open take on both fantasy and tabletop gaming, one defined by player choice and shared storytelling, limited only by the imagination of the players rather than adherence to tradition and reliance on nostalgia and the past. And this is why old school fans are jumping ship. This is why old school fans are finding other, systems to play. This is why people like myself are raising my kids on systems like Basic Fantasy. Again, don't tell them Clownfish TV sent you, but I do like his system quite a bit. This is why, because Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop gaming in particular, has been completely taken over by Twitter, by Tumblr. That audience, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is the dynamic is definitely different. And I just love the, hey, let's just throw the rules out the window and just make up whatever kind of character I want to make up for storytelling. And this does explain a lot. A lot of the mentality that you see. It's every, D&D has sort of become, I don't know, a fan fiction generation system, I guess. I don't know. We see a lot of crossover with D&D and webcomics and the Steven Universe crowd and all of that. And then a lot of those people, they get into working in animation and comics. And it is that kind of mindset. It's very different than what it was back in the 80s. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely has strayed from its roots. And I, for one, am looking forward to the return of Kryn. I would like to see D&D embrace a more traditional aesthetic and a more traditional fantasy setting, because D&D did originate so many fantasy tropes, for sure. That to see it turn into basically a furry con lately is kind of disheartening, and for me anyway, it's turned me off to D&D. But that's me, and I'm old, so whatever. I thought it was funny. I thought it was a funny meme, but now they're trying to cancel them. Of course they are. Would be hilarious is if the Dragonlance books sold through the freaking roof. And actually forced Wizards of the Coast to maybe take a look at those old school gamers that they've been actively shunning, in my opinion, for years, and took a look and said, hey, you know what? Maybe these people aren't so bad after all. Maybe they got lots of money because they're older and they're established in their jobs, and they used to drop serious coin back in the day on all of our modules and all of our figurines and all of this stuff. Maybe we want money again. Let's start making money again. That would be nice. I'm gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.